Welcome back, everybody, from our brief intermission. We are going to jump into Inkle now, which is another variant of program that you can use. As previously mentioned, I was at one point making a game in Twine when it suddenly became necessary to switch into Inkle. And the reason why is that Inkle is it can do the exact same branching that Twine does, but Inkle is really, really great if you need to set up conditions. And what I mean by that is that if you want to have that, if the player saw one card already, that then no longer is an option that's available, then Inkle is really great at that. Or if you want to set up an inventory system where, say you've made a game or you're writing a story where the player finds different objects, but after they've found, I don't know, like the magnifying glass, you don't want that to be an option that's available, or you want the game to remember later on that the player has that object. This is a really great system for that. And I'll show you the example that I have for you, but we can also take a look and see exactly how those systems are set up. It looks a little bit more codey, like it looks like a coding language, which in a way it is, but it's actually a lot simpler than it'll probably look. It'll look like a ton of text with all these different symbols, but it has a lot of logic to it that takes a bit of time just to learn, but with a tutorial, it makes it super, super easy. A lot of the tutorials as well have the code as an example that you can just copy, paste into the application, into your downloaded version, and you could see exactly what makes this thing happen. It's kind of like split. We'll go through it, but it's not as scary as it looks. So we'll take a look here. If I'm screen sharing again. Yes?
All good. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is a game that I made couple months ago. Well, I should say I finished it a couple months ago. I started it a lot longer than that. And it is a game where you are at a friend's wedding and you've been suddenly called up on stage to give a speech. And in this game, you will be given different options as to what you want to say in your speech. And at the end of the game, after you've made all of your choices, you will be ranked. You'll be given a score, basically, as to how good of a friend you are, and if the couple is still friends with you after, if they've been horribly offended, or if they're just so thrilled with the speech that you gave. So yeah, we can take a look at what that looks like. Now you can see with Ink, this is again the very basic, simplest presentation, that it appears like text in the center with the options down below. You can actually, I'm sure you can do it with Twine as well, but you could also embed your choices inside the text. I just have it set up so that they're all at the bottom, but you could have, I've done it with another game where I have like a paragraph with like the options inside. So there's different ways you could set it up, but we're here to give a wedding speech. So we have some options. We can kick off this speech with a beautiful quotation. We can tell a joke, or we can give a compliment to the bride and groom. I don't know which one is the best. Does anyone have a preference which one we should do?
Let's tell a joke.
All right, we'll start with a joke. Oh, but we have some options. Do you want to joke about marriage? Do you want to joke about giving speeches, or make a joke about this wedding specifically?
Giving speeches?
Giving speeches. All right. So what I've done is that, just for somebody who's playing this, I bolded, again, using my fancy bold technique with HTML, everything that you as a character say, so that if by the end of the game you wanted to go back and look at what all your options were, it would jump out what you actually said in the speech. And in this case, we make a joke about giving a speech, and it doesn't quite go over the way you want, but we're going to keep going. We could say a quotation, we could tell another joke, or we could tell a story. I'm going to say, let's tell another story. And we have some options again. We could tell a story about the bride, the groom, or the families. I actually forget what some of these are. I haven't played this in a while. Let's tell a story about the groom. That seems safe. And this is one about Jacob playing a prank in high school, um, where he streaked as like a senior prank, and the room chuckles. The bride isn't too happy, but it goes over pretty well. So one of the things that I really liked about writing this, and maybe something that appeals to you as well, is that for this particular story, I wanted to not give a lot of information about any of the characters right at the start, but as you play through, you learn a little bit more about the relationships between you as a character, as well as the bride and groom, how they met, their families, their romance, that these things would become clear as you make different choices. That was just the writing side that appealed to me, the storytelling bit. We have some more options. We can keep this speech going. We can show a slideshow, sing a song, or tell another story. What should we do?
Let's sing a song.
Sing a song.
Let's sing a song. All right. These are our options: One Night in Bangkok, Mambo Number 5, or Wonderwall.
Wonderwall, definitely.
Obviously, that's the best choice. And it goes over amazingly. It just, the crowd loves it. People are going crazy. The bride and groom are thrilled. You nailed it. Great choice. We're almost there. And so we have to finish this speech somehow. We can make a toast, we can make a big announcement, or we can make a big exit. Make a toast. Good option. We can toast to the happy couple, the cake, or to all the singles out there.
To the cake.
To the cake. Nice. I would probably do the same. Love a good cake. Anyway, so you've given your whole speech. You receive a lukewarm applause by the end of it. It's fine. Tough crowd. But we're finished, and we'll see if we're still friends. How good of a... Ooh, you guys, we did very well. We are the best friend. Happy couple's thrilled. They slip you a key to their hotel room. They really loved your speech. And you did great. This is actually, I think, the best score in the game. So good job, everyone. But we can always go back and start again and try some other options. So this game in particular, the way that I structured it, I wanted it to be very replayable. That, I mean, there's a ton of options that we didn't choose, that for each category, there were 3 different options. So you could play this a couple different times and get a different result, get a different ending, which is something that I just thought would be really funny and really interesting for this type of game. So there's what an Inkle game looks like. But now let us dive into what's behind, which is right here. Horrifying. Okay, so this is what Inkle looks like. Again, there's a lot of text happening, but I'll walk you through what it looks like. So the way that I've programmed this game is that there's a points system. When I sat down to make my spreadsheet, map out what my choices would be, it started to become clear that the structure of this game is very similar to like a 17 magazine quiz. Like, you know, when you'd like, it'd be like, how successful are you? Or how good are you at studying or whatever? And then you have your A, B, and C options. And at the end, it would say, if you answered mostly A's, or if you answered this, then you get a score of 3. That it was that kind of structure that would then result in what the final score for the player was. And that would have a different, I don't know, a ranking system based on points. And so that's exactly what I set up here. You'll see in the green text that's where that system exists. So we've set up that at the beginning, you have a score of 0, of course. But depending on the options that you pick, you'll get a score of +1. If you come to this card at all, you'll get a score of +2. You'll get a score of +3. I think only one of them has a minus, like a negative score, and that's at the end if you confess your love for the groom. and then you get points taken away, but everything else is that you get a score added. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think choosing Wonderwall gets you a +4, which is the highest you can get. So I don't know, it's been a while since I've looked at this one. But you can see there's tons of different options. There's different ways to get points, but if we go all the way down to the bottom where the actual, I guess, scores are totaled, I've set it up so that you can see if you have a score of less than 2, that's greater than, no, that's less than, because of like the heart. That's how I remember. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is basically the game tallies it as you go, and then by the end, it has been keeping track of what you've seen. It's not so much how many points you have, but it's based on what cards you've seen, and each card you've assigned a number to, and it knows which ones you've seen, which ones you haven't, and that's how it calculates them. I did another Inkle game where I set up an inventory system as well, where it was that the player was collecting objects as they moved around a space. And it was very much the same sort of thing where if they had seen one, then the option is no longer available. And the game remembers that like they have this item that they can use later, or that the option to use it later reappears. So if that's something that you're interested in, a little bit more, I don't know what to call it. Not like an RPG style, like a tabletop game. If you were to think of it that way, where you've been collecting items, or if you start with certain items that you could presumably make a game where the player can choose what they want to equip themselves with at the start, and then the game can remember what items the player has versus which items they wouldn't have in that case, that maybe become available later on. That this is a great system to do that with. We can also see the blue text is what's in the Twine equivalent, is those like square brackets of showing the name, or like the link that you're clicking on, and it goes to the name of the next node. Their system is, I mean, they have square brackets, which show the text that's going to be displayed, but they will have plus signs to show like a link. The other option for Twine, which I really like that they give it as an option, is that if you use a star instead of a plus, it means that that option disappears if you've clicked on it once. So this is a great system where if you do have a main menu or a main screen that you want the player to come back to, you don't actually need to create a whole new card. You can use the exact same one with the same name, and it's the options that you're altering rather than having to create something new or having to change the text that's inside, if that makes sense. So you'll see at the end that this text, so what kind of friend have you turned out to be? All of these answers that come next, the images as well as the text below, it's all the same node. It's that I've given, depending on what your score is, I've told it to show this text and to show this image, depending on what the value is. And so it ends up actually, if we were to look at this as a flow chart, it would end up being a slightly simpler looking chart. And it's just a little bit more complex in terms of the choices that are actually being shown. Again, make a flow chart because it will save your life and make building one of these a whole lot easier. Likewise, the way that I mentioned I was able to embed images in Twine is the exact same thing here, that you have your string, you have the name of it, and then you just put it inside of a folder with all of your images and the exported HTML file from this. You can also see with Inkle that on the right-hand side of the screen, you can play through what it is that you've written on the other side. So it makes it very easy to debug and to test out what has happened. What's nice, again, like Twine, is, I mean, that didn't do anything really, but if you make a mistake, it'll show up in red, or it'll flag right beside the text if there's a missing link. If you try to link to something that doesn't exist, it'll tell you and say, hey, are you sure you wanted to do that? Which makes it nice to build and a little bit easier to test for bugs to make sure that everything has a connection, that there aren't any dead ends. So this just has a slightly different looking version of what Twine will do. Yeah, this, I will say that from when I first had the idea for this game to when I actually hit publish on itch, probably was about a year. It is not because this was difficult to make, it was because I got very lazy for a couple months. I would say that the actual planning and then the building of this, as well as I did all of the art, like all the pictures, again, I drew them very, very quickly. I think I did them in a day. All of that put together, the planning, the building, probably took about 3 weeks or a month to actually do, as well as looking up the building out this point system. But the actual writing was what I was really lazy on. And you can see there's a ton of writing on this. Because I had my outline already, that made it a lot easier. But to just sit down and come up with the jokes and, well, not the jokes, but just like how I wanted to phrase it and the voice and all that stuff is what took me the longest time. And again, if I was really just wanting to get it done, it probably wouldn't have taken me that long, but I got distracted with other stuff. So it goes, but it didn't end up taking a huge span of time. That being said, I had used Inkle before, and the first time you use it, there's a slightly longer learning curve to Twine, I find, just because Twine is a lot more visual. It's very clear to see where everything is, where this being slightly more text-based, you'll need to have your flowchart beside you so that you can reference back a little bit more. But as I've been saying, Inkle is, I find, slightly just better when it comes to that conditional stuff. If you want to add in more consequence to the choices that the player is making, that this is what I prefer to use for that. I do think you can do it in Twine, and I'm sure there's a tutorial that lives somewhere out there. I just haven't used it personally. So if this looks like too much and you'd rather use Twine, I think it is possible. You just might have to do a little bit of extra digging into the internet as to how to add it into a project, but it's up to you, whichever one you prefer. So yeah, this, again, not too different from Twine in terms of exporting. Hang on, I think if I get, yeah. You can export to a couple different formats. I would usually, I think it's web or story.js, which gets it into the like the HTML file, which you can then put into a zipped folder and upload to itch. JSON is probably what you would do if you want to pop it into Unity. The nice thing about this is that it's already kind of a proof and copy. So if you didn't want someone to edit it or check through, you could copy all of this stuff on the left, send it just in an email to someone, and they could copy, put it in their version of Inkle and be able to play through it as well. So it's a little bit easier for bug testing than Twine in that respect, which I quite like. And especially if you're doing a very, very big game, that's another difference, is that Inkle can support a huge project, whereas Twine slows down a little bit more, just in my experience. Maybe it's my computer. I didn't actually check that, but depending on your scale, I would say if you're looking to create a game that's like an hour long, use Inkle. If you're looking at something that's going to be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then Twine is a great bet for that. So you'll just have to try it out and see. I don't think there's much more to share here. I mean, please jump in and play around with it once, if it's something that you're interested in using. But I'll open it up again if anyone has any more questions about this tool in particular, or wants to go back and look at anything in particular, we can do that as well.
So Stephanie, I see that you raised your hand a few minutes ago. Do you still have your question?
Well, yeah, it was about the I had the question like can we do the item recalling thing in Twine, but you answered that. So
Yes, Probably.
But it would be harder. I would have to go.
Yeah,
dig
it's
deeper.
you might have to go digging for that information a little bit more. Whereas Inkle is set up for that a little bit more clearly, I find. And there's more tutorials available, which I've sent the links already to Elaine, so she'll be able to send you guys the tutorials I've used. And again, a lot of them have the code where you can just copy and paste and then modify it as you want, which makes it a lot easier to design these things.
If I can add something, I once made an kind of RPG game in Twine. And we had like an inventory with stuff you could buy. And so technically it's doable. It's a bit tricky, but it's doable.
It's doable. Yes. Get a, I don't know, warm beverage, put on some nice music, and get ready to just sit for 2 hours to figure it out. And then when it's done, it's done. It's just a bit frustrating to just start at first. So get really cozy and then try it out. Any other questions?
We have one question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but Ashley is saying, does Ink use CSS for visual changes as well? Say you want to change backgrounds, you may have said, but I think I missed it.
I have not used it, again, not being great at CSS, but I believe you can. Just like with Twine, you can do very basic things if you're changing the background, changing the font, changing the colors, probably changing even like the alignment of how it appears on a very basic page. Yes, you should be able to do all that with CSS. I think I have images in here. I think you can also do audio as well. That was a question I asked on their Discord once, and I don't think I ended up actually adding in audio for the game I was working on, but somebody gave me an answer about how it's possible. So I think you can do that too. Yeah, it's quite similar in having a very basic format that if you just export it as an Inkle game or a Twine game, that it has its standard. But with the JSON file as an option to export, you can put that into Unity and again have the system of nodes that you've created that you can then do stuff with. However, you artists magic things. That is a mystery to us writers. But yeah. Oh, I see now. Okay, yes, there's a chat. Cool. Okay. Any other questions about?
So Franny had a question.
Yeah, I know this one is mostly used for like choose your own adventure. The game I want is kind of similar. It's just inspecting items and talking to people, but there is player movement. So would this be useful for that? Because I know judging from how it goes, like it goes from one item to the next. Is there a way to like have a pause until an action is taken, I guess? I don't know how that works. I'm a total noob to like everything games. So I don't know.
Are you saying that you'd want to have them, like say they were in one room and there's things they can do in that room and then either you'd want them to have finished all of those things before they move into the next?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yes.
So like it has kind of like a flow chart for the text, but a requirement has to happen. So they have to take an action. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So another thing that I really like about Inkle that it's not in this game, it's in a different game that, I mean, I guess I could open that up too. Oh, actually, no, I don't think it's saved here. Where I do have something very similar, and it's just that you have to, you set that certain conditions have to be met before an option becomes available. So it might be that you end up, if you were to, which you should, make a flowchart where you have your like a chapter 1 or like an act 1 of like, this is everything that can happen in this space, all of the possibilities. And once either all of them or certain ones or a certain number of them are fulfilled, then the option to move into the next space or the option for other spaces becomes available. That's definitely something you can set up.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I have. I made like a 2 a.m. flow chart because I was crazy. So it's really bad because it was like done at 2 a.m. But I just have like for the first room, it's like a repeated text until you inspect a certain item.
Mhm.
and then the text would change. But I wasn't sure, since this is more choose your own adventure, so it just flows really easy. So I wasn't sure if it would work for pauses for player movement. Yeah.
Yes, it can. And that's just how I said is probably how you'd set it
Yeah.
up, where you'd have
Yeah.
every
Like condition.
everything that can happen in one space, and then the condition, however you want to
Yeah.
set it, that once that's done, then they have permission, or they have the option presented to them to move into the next space.
Okay.
I do believe that there is a really good example that I saw when I was trying to learn the system, and it's like a detective story where you're a detective and you need to, like, I don't know, you look around a room to see the options of like all the different clues, so that there's an inventory there as well, that you're picking stuff up, but then it's set up so that after you've seen a certain number of items, then the policeman comes in and asks you what happened. So
Cool.
there's
Yeah.
like a limitation on it as to like which things you can look at, or there's something like that. And so if I think it might be on just like the main Inkle tutorial site, or something quite similar. I found it very quickly in a Google search, so I'm sure you should be able to as well. But that might be something where you could borrow some of that code
Yeah.
and then adapt it
edit
to
it.
to what
Yeah.
you need, which would make it a lot easier than trying to write it yourself. So
Yeah. Okay.
that's
Perfect.
definitely possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Because I was like,
Yeah.
oh God, coding. So
Yeah, no,
we'll see.
it's not for me. I understand
Yeah.
completely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions?